Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. We're going to start by talking about someone I don't really want to talk about. U.S. conservative pundit Tucker Carlson spotted in Moscow amid Putin interview rumors. Am I surprised that Tucker Carlson has gone to Russia to meet with Putin? Absolutely not. I am surprised the Kremlin has waited 2 years to allow Tucker Carlson to come to the Kremlin to meet with Putin. Tucker Carlson has been completely loyal to Russia for almost 10 years now, perfectly promoting Kremlin disinformation and propaganda to his audience here in the United States. And if you don't believe me that Tucker Carlson is working for the Russians, believe Tucker Carlson. He admitted it on his broadcast.
So Hunter Biden did not know Hunter Biden. I actually like Hunter Biden, but that's totally corrupt and you know it. Why is it worse to ask about it than it is to do it?
Because people are dying on the front lines. You think it's a joke?
Why do I care? Why do I care what's going on in the conflict between Ukraine and Russia? And I'm serious. Like, why do I care?
I'll tell you why.
And why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am?
Because those of us who are watching, myself, who think preserving democracy is important. When Dick Cheney said what the Russians did was an attack,
I don't care.
A warlike attack.
Preserving democracy is important. I don't care. Why shouldn't I root for Russia, which I am? So this is Russian state media TASS, the Union of Journalists of Russia, announced its readiness to accept Tucker Carlson into its ranks. There are no independent journalists remaining in Russia. They've all been imprisoned, killed, or forced to flee the country. The only people speaking remaining in the country are people loyal to Vladimir Putin, willing to push whatever the Kremlin tells them to push. So this should be a red flag for anyone who used to like Tucker Carlson, based on what he would talk about, when it's obvious he's been working for Russia for quite some time. And Tucker Carlson's a pathological liar. He's been fired from PBS News, CNN, MSNBC, and Fox News. His recent show on Fox News, he was fired after pushing election conspiracy theories without any evidence to back it up, lying that Dominion voting machines were rigged without any evidence. Dominion Voting Systems is a private company. They took Fox News to court, and Tucker Carlson cost Fox News $787 million. That's why he was fired. So he's now truly on his own, trying to push Kremlin propaganda on YouTube and Twitter, and he's honored to be invited to Moscow to bend the knee before the dear leader. So let's talk about the front lines briefly. Top Ukrainian military journalists warn of a crisis in the critical Avdiivka sector. Moscow says its troops are definitely winning in Avdiivka, and Kyiv says its forces are killing the Kremlin soldiers left and right. So this was scheduled. I told you, going back a couple months, that Ukraine eventually will have to pull out of the city of Avdiivka. Given that Republicans are blocking additional military aid here in the United States, Ukraine doesn't have the ammunition to withstand this kind of onslaught that the Russians have been bringing. Every day, for almost 4 months, the Kremlin has been sending their soldiers to die in these suicide assaults on Avdiivka. If you do this for 4, 5, or 6 months, eventually you're going to make some progress. So there was a big jump in the map that happened 2 days ago. The Russians snuck into this dacha part, and the Ukrainians holding these tree lines, this became indefensible for them. So they had to pull back. This allowed the Russians to advance closer to the city by about 1 kilometer. Ukraine is trying to deny Russia a propaganda win prior to Putin's March election. But eventually the Ukrainians will pull back to a better fortified defense line, probably close to here. Is this the end of the war? No. Would it be nice if Ukraine could hold Avdiivka? Yes. But Russia's being very effective in weakening support for Ukraine, especially here in the United States. Which brings us to this border security Ukraine aid bill that Republicans were demanding. U.S. Senate negotiators released border and military aid bill, which includes $60 billion for Ukraine. This $60 billion is not money we're giving to Ukraine. We give Ukraine old military equipment that we built in the 80s and 90s, equipment that would have to be decommissioned eventually anyways. We then place contracts for new equipment for ourselves that's better and more modern. This $60 billion would stimulate the U.S. economy, creating jobs with Raytheon, Lockheed Martin, Huntington Ingalls, General Dynamics, Northrop Grumman. Creates jobs, creates tax revenue, creates economic growth here in the United States. Here's a statement from President Biden. We've reached an agreement on a bipartisan deal that includes the toughest and fairest set of border reforms in decades, and it includes support for Ukraine and Israel and provides humanitarian assistance for the Palestinian people. I urge Congress to pass this bill immediately. So the text was released on Sunday morning. Today is Tuesday, and more or less this bill is dead. And the reason why is Donald Trump. Flexing clouts, Trump pressures Republicans to kill the Ukraine aid deal. Here's his post on Truth Social. Only a fool or a radical left Democrat would vote for this horrendous border bill, which only gives shutdown authority after 5,000 encounters a day, when we already have the right to close the border now, which must be done. There's not really anything in this bill that Democrats actually want. It's true. Democrats want amnesty. Democrats want a path to citizenship for these 10 or 11 million illegal immigrants. So, of course, the Democrats were never going to ask for this in the bill. This bill is a list of stuff that Republicans want. That's why the bill was negotiated. That's what's being presented. And Speaker Johnson, who is the second most powerful man in our government, is just going to do whatever Donald Trump says. Donald Trump handpicked him to be Speaker of the House when Kevin McCarthy was removed. Speaker Johnson only has about 5 years' experience in government. He was a nobody in the Republican conference. And Donald Trump elevated him to this powerful position on the condition that he just does whatever Donald Trump wants. Here's the tweet from Mike Johnson. I've seen enough. This bill is even worse than we expected and won't come close to ending the border catastrophe the president has created. As the lead Democrat negotiator proclaimed, under this legislation, the border never closes. Mike Johnson's a pathological liar, and he couldn't even get through this tweet without lying, because Donald Trump says the border shuts down at 5,000 encounters a day. So yes, the border does shut down, and it's outlined in the bill when this would happen. So to say the border never closes is just a lie. And that's the name of the game right now from MAGA Republicans. They want to defeat this bill at all costs. It's a good bill, they know that, so they have to lie about the provisions of the bill. They're lying about absolutely everything. So to counter these lies, let me introduce you to conservative Republican Senator James Lankford from Oklahoma. As far as conservative red states in America, I mean, Utah, Wyoming, and Oklahoma have to be the top three. So James Lankford is not a liberal. He's not a radical left Democrat. And James Lankford explains it like this. The Border Emergency Authority has been the most misunderstood or maybe just misrepresented parts of the bill. Some people have said it would mean 5,000 people a day are coming into the country every day. That is absurd and untrue. The emergency authority is not designated to let 5,000 people in. It is designated to close the border and turn 5,000 people around. The Border Emergency Authority will only last 3 years, enough time to hire more Border Patrol agents, hire more immigration judges, get through the backlog of cases. This doesn't mean 5,000 illegal immigrants get to come into the country every single day. So here's James Langford on Fox News explaining the bipartisan bill.
Joining us now for his first interview since the text was released last night, GOP Senator James Langford. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. I'm going to go to the part that you wanted to find the most misunderstood, the 5,000. What is it exactly?
Yeah, it's really ridiculous when we come on the backside of December. What just happened when we had 10 and 12,000 people a day coming across. And this authority is a 5,000 authority to say if you get to 5,000, which we've been there every single day except for 7 in the last 4 months, that it completely closes the border down. It deports everyone. It changes the paradigm from right now. What the Biden administration is doing is catching and releasing everyone to actually catching and deporting everyone. It literally flips the script on it. I have people saying, well, I don't want to.
This is a very important point to make. It's legal to come to the United States and ask for asylum. If you show up at the border or port of entry and ask for asylum, you're not an illegal immigrant. It's legal under U.S. law to ask for asylum. So if you want to prevent 5,000, 6,000, 10,000 people a day from showing up at ports of entry and asking for asylum, you need to change the law. President Biden can't do this through executive action. And this bill increases the threshold, increases the difficulty to qualify for asylum here in the United States. The reason why catch and release is a thing is we don't have enough detention beds to hold all these people until they can get their day in court to hear their asylum claim. That's the law. President Biden wants to follow the law. So if you don't like the current process we have, that's allowing all these people in, pass a bill in Congress and change the law. So Senator Langford is saying, if we hit above this 5,000 threshold, it automatically closes the border. And 0 people are getting in. 0 people can even claim asylum. Asylum's no longer a thing if the border is being overwhelmed. That's what this bill does.
I'm going to do that at 5,000. I want to do that at 3,000 and say, well, fine, we can do 3,000. But right now, every day we're at 5,000. It doesn't matter between the two. We've got to be able to have something that mandatorily deports everyone rather than actually releases everyone. That's what this does. Some people are thinking.
This bill would trigger mandatory deportations of absolutely everyone as soon as the border becomes overwhelmed at 5,000 migrant encounters a day. This is the sweet deal that Republicans are turning down. Senator Langford clarifies again, people coming to the border does not mean they are being allowed into our country. Detain and deport. This bill will strengthen border security so that border agents can detain and deport absolutely everyone. But Donald Trump doesn't want this. Donald Trump wants open borders for another year so he can complain about it on the campaign trail. So all of his MAGA minions are lying and spreading disinformation to cause people to panic and pressure their Republican representatives to oppose this bill. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell has been pretty quiet the last 2 days. He did put out a statement, I think, supporting it, but this is the kind of hate he's getting on social media. This tweet is from Selden G.A. Dogs, who describes herself as a ultra-MAGA deplorable, claiming she's followed by Senator Ted Cruz, General Michael Flynn, and even Scott Baio. And she's tweeting everywhere, $58 billion for the entire U.S. military and $60 billion for Ukraine. There is something seriously wrong with politicians today. So people who blindly support Trump are flooding social media with misrepresentations of the bill, claiming that we're giving more money to Ukraine than we're spending on our own military. This woman has 38,000 followers on Twitter, blue verified checkmark. And the worst person spreading disinformation is Elon Musk. In just 24 hours, Elon Musk tweeted 26 times, promoting the conspiracy theory that this border security bill will allow in millions of illegal migrants and then give them the ability to vote here in the United States. Here's Senator Lankford responding to Elon Musk.
Here's a claim being circulated on Twitter or X by Elon Musk, who posted, quote, "The long-term goal of the so-called border security bill is enabling illegals to vote. It will do the total opposite of securing the border," unquote. Now, I know that Elon Musk is not an expert on illegal immigration or the border, but he has a huge megaphone.
He does.
Explain what he's talking about here. Is he wrong?
Well, I think he needs to go back to doing the 2 million Teslas that are currently being recalled right now to be able to focus in on that. No, it's not focused on trying to be able to get more illegals to vote. That's absurd in the process on it. It is against the law for anyone that is not a citizen of the United States to be able to vote in the United States in any federal election. That remains so. Obviously, we're not dealing.
Of course, this bill does not allow illegal immigrants the ability to vote in the United States. That's not going to stop Elon Musk, who supports Russia and doesn't want to see $60 billion in military aid going to Ukraine. So Elon Musk bought Twitter for this specific purpose, to spread Russian disinformation and to panic Americans. And Elon Musk is the ultimate ladder puller. The guy is an immigrant who came here in the 90s on a student visa and moved to Silicon Valley to start working while still on a student visa. He didn't have a work visa. He didn't have the proper ability to legally work in the United States. He eventually got it, being an intelligent man who wanted to found startups in Silicon Valley. I'm glad he did become a US citizen. But for this guy, to spit on immigrants trying to come to America to better themselves and better their own life, when that's what he did, Elon's a serious scumbag. And MAGA Republicans in Congress are straight up lying to the American people. Here's a tweet from Florida Republican Representative Anna Paulina Luna. Here's what she says. In honor of Chuck Schumer, I'll be introducing a bill that will require any politician who advocates for sending American troops to Ukraine to be required to fight on the front lines with them. She's implying that if this border security Ukraine aid package is passed, this will require American soldiers to go to Ukraine and fight the Russians. This, of course, isn't true, but just because it's not true doesn't mean she's not going to say it. And I didn't know who this woman was. We have 435 members in the House of Representatives. So I checked out her Wikipedia page. And Anna Paulina Meyerhofer was born in 1989. She's 34 years old. And her mother has Mexican-American ancestry. And her father has Mexican and German ancestry. So 3 of her grandparents probably came here illegally from Mexico 50 or 60 years ago. And her paternal grandfather was born in Germany and, according to the family, drafted into the Wehrmacht in World War II. So this woman has 4 grandparents. 3 of them probably came here illegally from Mexico, and 1 fought for the Nazis. And she's serving in Congress opposing this border security and Ukraine aid bill. The story of this woman just gets weirder and weirder. How did she get into Congress? When you check out her early career in education, she did serve enlisted for 5 years in the U.S. Air Force as an airfield management specialist. But while enlisted, she appeared in 2013 Sports Illustrated's Fridays PM Hot Clicks and served as a cocktail waitress at the Red Rose Gentlemen's Club, a strip club in Fort Walton Beach, Florida. She's a former stripper. So how did she get into Congress? And she was an Instagram influencer. She had a bunch of followers on Instagram shaking her stripper booty, and eventually discovered that she just promoted Donald Trump. Donald Trump would pay attention to her. You can go online and see the pictures of yourself, of her MAGA pride. But that was enough to get into Congress. To get into Congress, you're paid $174,000 a year. It's a pretty sweet job. So she won a Republican primary in this congressional district in Florida only because she supported Donald Trump and Donald Trump endorsed her. So why would Donald Trump endorse a former stripper, an Instagram influencer in her early 30s? And it's because this woman will just say and do whatever Donald Trump wants. She will lie for Donald Trump, whatever he wants. And this ultimately, to my non-American audience, this isn't going to make sense to you. How can Donald Trump so completely control the entire Republican Party? And I'm going to explain to you exactly what's happening here. And what's happening currently is the primary process for all of these elected representatives is currently happening. Most members of Congress don't fear the general election. 80% of districts in America are either safely Democratic or safely Republican. 80% of members of Congress don't fear the general election. They fear a primary opponent. And what Donald Trump has been doing for the last 8 years is flying his jet into these members' districts and campaigning against them in the primary process. So if you're a Republican senator or Republican representative who doesn't want to do what Donald Trump says, he will fly to your district and then endorse and campaign literally anyone else who will just do whatever he wants. He's been doing this for 8 years. This is how he's accumulated so many of these MAGA minions in Congress that will just do whatever he says. And I'll give you an example. In the state of North Dakota, this is where I lived for 4 years, the Republican senator is Kevin Cramer. I've seen the statements from Kevin Cramer. He wants to support this border security bill. He's a conservative Republican who wants to secure the border. But Donald Trump doesn't want this. And Kevin Cramer is up for re-election in November, but he doesn't fear his Democratic opponent. He fears Trump endorsing a different primary opponent and then losing the primary. So North Dakota's primary is on June 11th. After June 11th, Kevin Cramer is the Republican nominee in November. He feels safe. But prior to June 11th, Kevin Cramer is terrified that Donald Trump will show up in North Dakota and endorse a primary opponent if he doesn't do what Donald Trump wants. Border Patrol Union endorses controversial Senate border deal. Far better than the status quo. According to Donald Trump, only a fool or a radical left Democrat would support this bill. So why is it that the brave men and women risking their lives because of the drug smuggling, the gangs, the coyotes, why is it that the people who actually know the border situation the best, the people serving on the front lines, want Congress to pass this bill? They've endorsed it. They said this will make their jobs easier. This will make America more secure. Riddle me this. I don't understand. So let's wrap up this segment of the video with James Lankford once again begging with Republicans to do the right thing and to pass this bill. And this is Senator Lankford responding to Speaker Johnson, saying the bill is dead on arrival in the House.
Your thoughts?
Yeah, unfortunately, he would step out and be able to say that right away before, obviously, he had had a chance to be able to read it as well and to be able to go through it. The key aspect of this, again, is, are we as Republicans going to have press conferences and complain the border's bad and then intentionally leave it open? After the worst month in American history in December, Now we've got to actually determine, are we going to just complain about things, or are we going to actually address and change as many things as we can? If we have the shot, and it's amazing to me, if I go back 2 months ago and say we had the shot under a Democrat president to dramatically increase detention beds, deportation flights, lock down the border, to be able to change the asylum laws, to be able to accelerate the process, no one would have believed it. And now no one actually wants to be able to fix it and says, I don't want to even debate it. I don't want to discuss it. We have to decide as Republicans, what are we going to actually do about the border? Leave it open or actually leave it closed?
Republicans are going to leave the border open for another year because that's what Donald Trump wants. And yes, we're talking about the border here in America, but this is really about Russia and Ukraine. Donald Trump, yes, wants to talk about the border, but the Republican Party here in the United States has been compromised. There's about 50 or 60 Republicans in Congress that are just straight up working for the Russians at this point. So I'm not feeling optimistic that Congress is actually going to pass this bill. Something else will happen. They're going to keep trying. But in the event that Donald Trump wins and a vote on military aid to Ukraine is blocked for another 272 days, we're having an election here in the United States. Please don't vote for or support any politician who won't support our democratic allies around the world. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. And the Netherlands has promised an additional 6 F-16 fighter jets for Ukraine. This brings their total up to 24. The first F-16s will begin arriving later this year, once pilot training is completed, and this is going to have a huge impact on the battlefield. Thank you so much to the people of the Netherlands. Ukraine exported 12 million metric tons of goods in January of 2024. Reaching a monthly record level since the beginning of Russia's full-scale invasion of February of 2022. Ukraine is successfully exporting more of their commodities now than under Russia's Black Sea Fleet grain deal. Think about that. Ukraine is getting more out now than when they were cooperating with the Russians to get their grain exports out. The reason why is Russia was hindering them, deliberately holding up ships in the Bosphorus Straits of Turkey. Ukraine is better off than it was a year ago getting their commodity exports out. So, final clip I have for you is from Dmitry at War Translated, highlighting the important work that Ukrainian defenders do, looking for bombs and unexploded ordnance in liberated territories. Here's a little bit of this clip. I'll put the whole thing down below, but this is a bomb-sniffing dog that enjoys his job.
От, професійна кінологічна аптечка. Бельгійська вівчарка за німецьку вівчарку більш витриваліша. Вона більш витриваліша, ця порода. Вона буде більше шукати територію, чим німецька вівчарка. Німецька вівчарка теж шукає непогано, але вона втомлюється. Цей пес буде шукати набагато довше. Це мій бойовий побратим. Ми з ним почали працювати по Київській області квітень 22-го року, коли вибили орка з Ірпеня, з Гостомеля, з Бучі. Там залишалися транспортні засоби під будівлями. І громадяни телефонували, що там знаходяться підозрілі предмети орковські. Сапер.
Cool dog. I'll put the clip down below if you want to see the rest. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.